everyone. You may have pale skin like I do, Nordic or Celtic type skin, and you may feel afraid of going out and enjoying the sunlight. Today you will learn about a risk factor for melanoma that you may not be familiar with, and you will learn concrete steps for how you can reduce your risk for melanoma. Hi, my name is Martha, and I'm a student of circadian and quantum biology. Today, I'm specifically trying to help people who have pale skin like I do, who may be afraid of the sun, to offer you some tips that you may not have heard of before that can really help you out. I'm also thinking today of a young woman named Emma. She was the wife of a neighbor of mine and the mother of their 3-year-old daughter. Emma was recently diagnosed with a malignant melanoma, and she did pass away, unfortunately. Emma had very pale skin, and I am dedicating this video today to Emma and her family. My hope for you, dear watcher, dear listener, is that you will walk away today feeling more confident about how you can protect yourself from melanoma if you have a really pale type of skin that burns easily, such as mine. And a promise to you I'm making is that you will be able to put down that sunscreen and go out in the sun more often, especially if you follow a lot of the tips I share on this channel. Today is part 1 of a 3-part video series about protecting yourself from melanoma if you have pale skin. Today we're going to talk about just 2 risk factors. The first risk factor is one that you probably have heard about before, and the second one you may not be familiar with. The first risk factor that you may have heard about is having a Fitzpatrick scale type 1 or 2. I'm a type 2. People with type 1 tend to be red-haired or blonde, and they do burn really easily. They have a hard time tanning. They may have blue or green eyes. As a type 2, I had auburn hair when I was younger and hazel eyes, and I did have a really easy time sunburning, but also I didn't know back then what I know now about how to practice sensible sun exposure. You may also have a family history of skin cancer, and when you were a teenager, you may have gotten a number of sunburns, or as a young adult. That will put you at higher risk for a melanoma now later in your life. A second risk factor for melanoma, if you're a type 1 or 2, is much less well known, and that's what we're going to focus on today. That risk factor is if you work indoors. This risk factor is true for young people too, like Emma. Do you work indoors? You're at much higher risk of developing a malignant melanoma if you work indoors rather than outside in consistent sunlight. What is going on indoors that would put us at higher risk? First of all, there's just a ton of blue light in an indoor work environment. There are 3 main sources of that blue light. The first source is the lighting around you. The fluorescent lighting above you, the standard LED bulbs that you might be using. We have a hard time finding incandescent bulbs now, which are not quite as high in blue light and have more red and near infrared, but we're just surrounded by toxic artificial blue light in our indoor environments now. A second source is our screens, our computer screens, our laptops, our cell phones. If you're using the factory settings on those devices, that blue light is really, really strong, and it is entering your skin as well as your eyes, affecting your circadian rhythm, but entering your skin and affecting your melanocytes, which will put you at higher risk for melanoma, which we'll talk about in a second. A third source of blue light in your indoor light environment is, even if you're lucky to have big windows for light, the light coming into those windows is predominantly blue. It's very heavy on the blue because modern efficient windows, energy efficient windows, block most of the ultraviolet light and a lot of the infrared light. So what's left is very high in the blue. So in our skin, we have something called the melanocytes. Melanocytes are the type of cell that build our melanin. Our melanin is the pigment in our skin, which is very protective against UV light. And it also plays many other roles that are really, really cool that I'd love to get into in a different video. But melanocytes build up that melanin. And it's the melanin that develops melanoma. And blue light is problematic because it overstimulates the melanocytes. Those melanocytes get overstimulated, they're at higher risk of developing melanoma. So in a moment, we're going to talk about how you can reduce your exposure to blue light in your indoor work environment. But a second thing I want to talk about briefly is near infrared. Indoors, we have an almost complete lack, a dearth of near infrared light. Because of those energy efficient windows, because of the lack of incandescent bulbs, we don't have the near infrared light. What is so important about near infrared light? Near infrared makes up 42% of sunlight when we're outside. So when we're indoors, we're not getting that near infrared. We need the near infrared to reach our mitochondria in our cells because our mitochondria make something called subcellular melatonin. And that subcellular melatonin is kind of like a janitor cleaning up a daycare or a daycare worker cleaning up the daycare center during the day. If they leave all the messes for the end of the day, it's going to be really impossible to clean it up. And subcellular melatonin is the most powerful antioxidant that our bodies make naturally, even more powerful than glutathione. The cells that are not functioning properly, like little baby cancer cells, which unfortunately we all have in our bodies all the time, they just haven't gotten out of control yet. If those little baby cancer cells are not cleaned up by subcellular melatonin, then we're at much higher risk for cancer, including malignant melanomas. So if you have pale skin and you work indoors, how can you protect yourself from developing melanoma? Let's talk about some free things you can do first. Almost everything with applied circadian quantum health is free, like going outside in the sunlight. I'm filming this video outside in my backyard, hoping that my neighbors don't walk by, but if they do, that's okay. I'm outside under the sun. I'm getting some sunlight on my skin as we speak. If you work under those toxic blue lights like the fluorescents and the standard LEDs, just cover up. Try to wear long sleeves, for example. No, you don't have to wear a hat, but just cover up. Definitely don't wear sunscreen. We'll talk more about sunscreen in part 2 of this video series, but sunscreen actually exposes your skin to more blue light because by blocking out UV light, what it leaves is a higher concentration of blue light coming through. And we just talked about how blue light overstimulates the melanocytes that make the melanin, and that's where the melanoma develops, in the melanin. Second, see if you can turn off some of that blue light. Are there fluorescent lights above you that you can turn off? I remember working in an office about 10 years ago, and I really didn't like the lighting, and I didn't know why, but I eventually figured out that I could ask my coworker next to me if we could turn off those fluorescent lights, which we did. We just had an individual lamp on each of our desks, and we had a big window, and that was so much more soothing in so many ways. And also, a few days ago, I was at a doctor's office, and I noticed that the receptionist had her own little workspace in there, and she could probably control her lighting, but she may not have thought about doing that. There were really harsh fluorescent lights all over the office, above her desk and everywhere, but she had her window open next to her, and I could see the light streaming in through the open window, through the screen. That's fine. So in addition to turning off some of that harsh lighting, maybe you have a window that you can open. That's always really helpful. Another tip to counter the blue light in your work environment is to see if you can just, go for a walk outside at lunchtime. See if you can eat lunch outside. See if you can take light breaks. I know it's difficult. Over the years, I worked in a lot of different offices. Maybe you could ask your boss if you could go outside for 3 or 5 minutes, or if you get a break for 10 or 15 minutes, just go outside. If you can stand or sit in the direct sun for a few minutes, that's terrific. But either way, you can get the light signals into your eyes and onto your skin that are so important for your health. So here are some tips to counter the blue light in your work environment that cost a little bit of money. They are not essential. They're just kind of fun if you have the ability to do that. For your desk, I would recommend a small red and near infrared panel, about so big, not too big. It could shine on you, towards you while you're working, and it wouldn't be obtrusive for your coworkers. I recommend the little mini red light and near infrared light panel from Bon Charge. And down in the show notes, I will leave a discount code for that. Perhaps you could replace some of your standard LED bulbs with bulbs like incandescent bulbs that have more near infrared. There's a new brand of bulb that was designed by optics and light engineer Scott Zimmerman. It's called the Nira bulb, and that's high and near infrared light. Finally, let's talk about your devices that have blue light coming from their screens. For your computer, for your laptop, you could download a program that I like called Iris Tech Software, where you can adjust the amount of blue light that's coming into your eyes and onto your skin. I will leave a link to that below. Also, for your phone, I highly recommend turning your phone screen red. For an Android, it's super easy. Just use the Twilight app. And for an iPhone, you'll have to go onto YouTube and search for your particular model of iPhone and how to turn the screen red. I'll leave links for that below. And finally, once it's sunset, you'll want to block blue light simply by wearing blue light blocking glasses. They should be orange ones. And above here, I'll leave a link to a video I did recently about blocking blue light after sunset. If you want to know when sunset is happening, as well as sunrise and other times of day that are important for our circadian rhythm, I highly recommend the app My Circadian App. I'll leave a link below. Maybe there are 1 or 2 tips you could try from today's video to help protect you from dying from a melanoma. So in the next 2 videos of this series, I'll talk about more risk factors for melanoma if you have a pale skin type that you might not have heard of already, and I'll talk about more concrete ways that you can reduce that risk. Be sure to catch parts 2 and 3 by liking this video and subscribing so you'll be alerted when those videos are posted. Please leave a question or a comment, and thank you so much for being with me today. Take care. Hey there, just a reminder, my friend, that this video is for informational purposes only. If you're seeking diagnosis or treatment, please consult with a trusted medical healthcare provider. Thank you.